Hi there, welcome to the one podcast where dad thinks he is totally cool and his daughter who thinks he rode on the backs of dinosaurs. It's the Lily Pod coming up next. Hey guys, welcome back to Lily's Pod. We want to thank everyone for reaching out after our first podcast. We've had great response and all, and everyone was really nice about it and really looking forward to many more of these, which is great. We also, before we dive into this episode, we also want to thank the board of directors and the chief financial officer, Mommy, because she's done what? She surprised us with...
Now we have a mic, so hopefully our talking will be clearer.
Yeah, well, yes. So we were surprised by the CFO, Mommy. She got us a microphone, and that's what we're talking with you guys on today. And so hopefully it sounds a little different. We shall see. It's even got like the cool little, screen or whatever it's called on there.
Yeah.
But anyway, we want to thank everyone for reaching out to us on our first podcast. We appreciate it. And so here is podcast number 2. And if you've seen in our social media feeds, we're talking about March 16th, 2020. And there's a big smile on our faces because really there's no one out there that probably doesn't know what happened in 2020 for sure. But that was the first day
of official quarantine
of school where we live. Right. And I know I mentioned earlier that it was first grade, but actually you were a kindergartner.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk a little bit about what that experience was like for you and really just kind of dive into a little bit of what that was like there. Right. Do you remember, I know you're a kindergarten, but do you remember the time that the school closed at all? Do you remember any of that?
I kind of do. I remember being like, what the actual heck is happening?
Yeah.
What do you mean school is getting closed because of the pandemic? Obviously, I was like, 5, maybe even 4?
Yeah.
2019, it basically, at the end, it started like getting more produced. But I was literally not even 6 years old yet, and people were telling me, oh yeah, you can't go to school for 4 years because there's like a worldwide pandemic going around and you'll never be able to step outside without a mask.
Yeah.
And obviously, because I was so young.
Yeah.
I remember it being like the online thing. I actually liked online school because I didn't have to like interact with anybody.
Right.
It was just a lot less overwhelming, you could say.
Yeah, and just for those, listening to the podcast that may have not had what we call COVID kids in there. So basically you went to school and
online.
and then COVID hit and they shut it down.
I was in school for around 2 months, and normally you're in school like for the whole year.
Yeah.
So I was in school for not even like 2 months, and then they were like, oh yeah, you can't come back to school.
Yep.
Just stay at home, do it at home. And I didn't actually do kindergarten online because that was too confusing, and the coronavirus was still like fresh out the pot. So I did do half of my first grade online, but in kindergarten I didn't actually finish it. So.
Yeah, and in kindergarten what they did was, to your point about the online, is they actually had you bring a computer or use a computer of ours and go on there as a kindergarten. Doing that, right?
Towards the end of kindergarten, we did a tiny bit of virtual, but during kindergarten, they just had like packets that they would send to the front door. I don't know where we got the packets from, but I would do like a packet a day, and that would be like basically going to school, even though it was like not the same whatsoever. So
looking back at it, I know you're obviously, you're a kindergartner, so obviously you're a little young on there, but did you like have any, like looking back at it, did you have any like thoughts or anything like that as far as, like what was really going on? Do you guys now that you're older, do you guys talk about it? Because your friends, you guys all went through it. Do you guys talk about the COVID and what that did educational wise for you guys?
We don't entirely talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
But I know sometimes when I was in 4th grade, since it was like the first year where we actually weren't like wearing masks or quarantine, everybody was talking about it and talking about how it started and stuff like that, getting all angsty about it. And I and my friends never really joined that because it's the past. Like, there's nothing we can do about it anymore. But we didn't really talk about it until like we were a little bit older and actually understand what happened.
Yeah. So as a kindergarten, you really didn't know what was going on or anything like that. And so for you, the pandemic kind of bleeded into 1st grade, right?
Yes.
And so what was like that? Like, what was like kindergarten, which was basically all online, and then going into 1st grade? Like, what do you remember that transition? Was there anything there?
Well, I remember that we didn't actually start like 1st grade like on the normal starting day.
Yeah.
We started maybe a month after the normal first day of school. So we just did online for probably 6 months, and then maybe for the last like 2-3 months of 1st grade, we went to in school with masks.
So let's talk a little bit about that.
Mm-hmm.
So how did that like, how do you think that affected you as like going to school with this word coronavirus, COVID, and having to wear masks and like social distance? How did that like affect you when you're back at school? Like, did that affect you in any way?
It did, because all that anybody would talk about, we wouldn't be talking about normal things that you would talk about, like actually things. Like, every conversation that my teacher had, any conversation that I had with anybody back then, somehow coronavirus would be brought into it.
And like, how did that make you feel?
It made me feel like coronavirus was taking over everybody's lives, which it basically was. It was capitalizing everybody and just making all the conversations about it. And it was really hard because I didn't really have a normal childhood because of that. So it did really affect me a lot. And going back to school was really that's why I love school. Probably one of the reasons why I love school is because I was online for 2 years. Yeah. So going to school is like, oh my gosh, wow.
Do you think like the virtual side of things, I know, obviously daddy's older,
mm-hmm.
Whatever, but like, technology now, computers now, as a dad, one of the things that I look back at it when you were a kindergartner is you really had to use a computer. Like, you had to really get in front of a computer and have class in there. And looking back at it, like, they were really teaching you how to use computers and that. Do you think that I know it was difficult for you, but mm-hmm. do you think that has helped you or is going to help you down the road because you've had to adjust and be really virtual?
I think that the pandemic in general and the virtual thing helps me adapt to new environments. Also, if there's another pandemic, I will be like, this is a breeze. Hopefully not. But if there is something like that, or I do have to go back to online school for some reason, I feel like what I've learned as literally a child, I think would help a lot. And sometimes even in the real world, I literally know nothing about computers. If my computer's frozen, I think I need to throw it out. But that's because they were teaching me how to do things on the computer, not how to take care of it. It was just it was a lot. So what was it like for you seeing the whole world just shut down after never seeing that ever?
Yeah, great question. So, man, it was crazy because from a parent standpoint, you at that time we had more access than you do now of news and all that stuff. And really it was unsure. It was an unsure feeling. I'm not sure what's actually happening here. And
It was kind of scary as well.
It was scary.
What if this is my whole life ahead of me?
Yeah,
just
that's a great point.
Sitting in my room on the computer, that was probably one of the scariest things about COVID for me is is COVID gonna end, actually end, or is it just gonna be my whole life ahead of me?
Yeah, and that's because from a parent standpoint, from mom and dad standpoint, our jobs, our companies had to adjust to that, and there wasn't a redundancy, which is like a backup plan for that. So there was a stretch of period there where we were in flux as well, and of course our number one goal is to make sure that you and your brother are safe. But I also think too, when the school started going down the road of virtual, that was difficult. And I know that there's probably a lot of parents out there right now listening. I mean, we're trying to juggle jobs.
And your kids being at home.
And you guys being at home, juggling jobs that, quite frankly, we weren't sure exactly how those jobs were going to work. But we had to juggle you as a kindergartner in first grade and trying to do that. So it was definitely scary. Scary for sure.
And what was it like watching me and Finley grow up in such a capitalized state?
Yeah. So those first couple of years were really tough. I know for me personally, they were tough. Your mom and I, that's where we kind of began our sobriety, just because the avenues of COVID, being stuck at home and those kind of things, a lot of parents didn't have any outlets in some cases. I know for mom and me, alcohol was part of that outlet there. And so we made a conscious effort to start being sober, because we realized that we have to, it's YouTube, right? We have to make sure.
Get in the zone.
You got to be present,
you have kids
right?
Now.
And not only that, but also too, trying to navigate the fact that we have to explain to you at a young age,
what's
happening, why you can't go to your friend's house, why we can't go to Target.
Oh, I can't wait to brag to my kids. No, you can't go to your friend's house. I was stuck in my house for 4 freaking years.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait.
And trying to explain that to a kindergarten, which is really fascinating right now, because you're so, mature right now and you understand, what COVID is, but, trying to explain that to you and your brother back then was so difficult. And for us too, for moms and dads out there, it was difficult because we weren't sure how to navigate with our friends right at the time. So it definitely was a difficult transition.
Do you think kids struggled as much as parents, or the other way around?
Man, that is a great question, honestly. And that's a tough question to answer because, I think that both parents and kids struggle. I think when we're talking about you at your age at kindergarten, it probably was a little bit easier for mom and dad to be able to kind of distract you a bit, being in a kindergarten. But for mom and dad, it was a difficult time too, right? Because it was just the 4 of us not able to do that. And so having the outlets, therapy that we go to and we had and all that really helped us.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't necessarily say it was any less harder for the kids than it would be for the parents.
And do you think that if me and Finley were the age we are now in COVID, in 2020, do you think it would be harder or easier?
Whew, another good question. I want to say it's probably would be God forbid if the pandemic's going down. I think it might be a little bit easier, and maybe some of the parents out there can comment, and it may be different for them. But I think it might be a little bit easier because you guys are older,
Mm-hmm.
and so we can really kind of talk about it. Because you got to remember, when you're a kindergartner,
you
don't really know what's going on, right?
Anything.
So you're upset because we can't go here, we can't do that, and this is closed for an extended period of time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's never easy.
Yeah.
That whole process was never easy, and but I think had you been the age that you are now, it probably may have been a different experience,
mm-hmm.
and
it would
maybe
probably
a bit
hit
easier.
It would probably hit me harder though, because
let me ask you that. Like if this was
like right now,
it
would hit me probably way worse than it was in kindergarten, because I was literally 4 years old. I didn't actually understand legit anything. I didn't probably even know my ABCs that well. So it probably didn't even hit me that hard until I grew up and I was like, oh, wow, that's like actually crazy. But if it hit me now, it would probably be like way harder to recover.
Yeah. Do you struggle now as a like an older kid? Do you feel like that maybe other kids may affect them?
I think it affected people a lot, like mentally. And
did it affect you mentally at all? Or
mm-hmm.
It did.
It probably was one of the sources to like my mental health being like not so amazing. I think kids my age were affected a lot. But sometimes I hear older kids talk about it, and they say
really?
it like high school, like Aubrey.
Yeah.
Aubrey's my cousin, by the way, y'all. She's
Shout
like
out to Aubrey.
15. If you're watching, Aubrey, love ya. Anyways, but I've heard Aubrey talk about it was really hard for her because she was like middle schooler. Yeah. So it was like she was changing, the world was changing. She said it was like a lot for her and her friends, and that it was just like really, really hard. So I think the older you get, maybe the harder it strikes you, because like you're older, you understand more things. It's like more of a responsibility than like a pandemic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you feel like school has changed for you a bit because of the pandemic? And are there certain things that you wish? Are there things that you wished mom and dad may have done better during that little short period of time to help you?
I don't remember most things, and I think y'all did a pretty great job, because I think like not even that far into quarantine y'all went sober, so it wasn't like y'all were actually like focusing a lot on us. So I think y'all did a lot, because y'all like helped me learn stuff. Like obviously the teachers were only online for 3 hours, and then the rest y'all had to do. That was your responsibility.
That's right.
And I think that I don't think y'all could have done anything different. I think y'all tried your hardest and you did your best. I think the quarantine also like shaped us a lot. So
yeah, that's a good point. Like one thing that we feel like that was really good that came out of quarantine was that, and in some families listening to us right now, this could be the total opposite. But one of the things that I feel that benefited from COVID is that we were all together.
Yeah, we were.
Certainly there were times where it was like, craziness, but.
And we didn't want to be like stuck in a house.
Together.
But.
I definitely think it got us together, right?
I think COVID went the best it could possibly be. We didn't get sick that much times, but I feel like it was the best COVID could have possibly been. Obviously, COVID literally sucked, but being with my family and like having the education options, because I know some kids during quarantine didn't even get education options.
That's right.
How did your mental health get affected by like the world basically shutting down and like just everything being in just like everything?
Yeah. Another great question, by the way. And I know you shared these questions, but I did not look at them. So I think for me, and our family's big on therapy. And so for me, I was already in therapy prior to COVID, and your mom and I were in therapy prior. So maybe not all the parents had outlets like that, but I'm thankful that we had already started therapy and the pandemic hit and we were able to.
So you had like more tools and resources, you would say?
Yeah, I would say that it wasn't like COVID hit and we were starting to go through therapy.
Mm-hmm.
Like we were already in therapy for a few years.
Yeah.
So it was an easier transition into having some sort of outlet to be able to cope with what was basically happening with everybody in our family. So a therapy definitely was a huge part during that time and still really is. But that definitely helped guide to help get through there, because a lot of it was trying to continue to raise a family, work,
and like you were working on alcohol and stuff.
Yes, and trying to be sober at the same time. So yeah,
it was like a lot, and like just not like seeing your family for a while, because I know that we saw our like cousins and aunts and stuff sometimes, but that was like once a year. So I know Mom is like used to literally seeing. Mom calls Hope. Hope is one of my family members. I don't know which, because I don't know.
Shout out to Hope.
Yep, shout out to her. Anyways, but I know that she used to call her like every day, but since she was also raising a family and she was also quarantined, I know that it was really hard for Mom, because she didn't really have her to talk to anymore, because they're like really close. Yeah. So I feel like that affected Mom a lot as well, not like being able to see her family.
Well, this was really great, Lily Grace.
Yeah, this was a great episode. Not probably. This was a great episode.
This was a great episode.
But yeah, that was our COVID story.
Yeah.
Quarantine story. What we felt. We hope that somebody out there maybe felt the same way or can relate a little bit. And we hope to see y'all next time. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.
We hope y'all enjoyed the episode. Make sure to tune into the next one and subscribe to all of our socials. Bye-bye.